Blog Talk Radio.
Recognized as Mr. Adams of Massachusetts.
Objects of the most stupendous magnitude. Measures which will affect the lives of millions, born and unborn, are now before us. We must expect a great expense of blood to obtain them. But we must always remember that a free constitution of civil government cannot be purchased at too dear a rate, as there is nothing on this side of Jerusalem of greater importance to mankind. My worthy colleague from Pennsylvania has spoken with great ingenuity and eloquence. He has given you a grim prognostication of our national future, but where he foresees apocalypse, I see hope. I see a new nation ready to take its place in the world. Not an empire, but a republic. And a republic of laws, not men. Gentlemen, we are in the very midst of revolution. The most complete, unexpected, and remarkable of any in the history of the world. How few of the human race have ever had an opportunity of choosing a system of government for themselves and their children. I am not without apprehensions, gentlemen. But the end we have in sight is more than worth all the means. I believe, sirs, that the hour has come. My judgment approves this measure, and my whole heart is in it. All that I have, all that I am, and all that I hope in this life, I am now ready to stake upon it. While I live, let me have a country. A free country.
Everybody, Joseph Gibson podcasting here, understanding the times in which we live today. A few things here I'm going to play here tonight, and we'll see if we get any calls here. If not, then that's fine. Just get the information out. like I said, the downloaded versions are really pretty much what everybody's listening to now, unless I got a scheduled guest on. So, but listen to this. This is about 19 minutes long. It's probably the most information you're ever going to get out there for the truth of what's really going on here in America today. So it's up to you what you want to do with the information. If I were you, I'd pay attention.
Up here also, and the speakers that I've had before me, I don't expect the eloquent speech that the other speakers have had coming from me. They've done a great job of putting out what our problem is, what America used to be, where we're at today, and I think we're all in agreement that it's a pretty dismal place that we're in, and we're frustrated, and we're trying to find out, how do we get out of this? We've got to answer the question, what happened? And that's what we're about with America's Remedy. I took 2 years off of work to research to try to figure out what happened with America back in the mid-'90s, and it was pretty striking. And really what it goes down to is we've lost our foundation. Here we are on July 4th, looking at this is the birth of America, and it really is the birth of America under its original foundation. But all that was overturned, and that's what we've got to look at. And it was overturned. It took God out of our society. And now, again, like I said, is the issue is not how we got here, but what we can do about it. And the theme of this is, Lord, heal our land. You know, we go to 2 Chronicles, and I just want to read a little bit further than what's traditionally read of the first sentence. This is the Lord speaking to Solomon. He says, if, and that's if, my people who are called by my name humble themselves and pray and seek my face and turn from their wicked ways, then I will hear from heaven and will forgive their sin and heal their land. Now my eyes will be open and my ears attentive to the prayer that is made in this place. If you will walk before me, as David, your father, walked, doing according to all that I have commanded you, and keeping my statutes and my rules, then I will establish your royal throne. And if you turn aside and forsake my statutes and my commandments that I have set before you, and go and serve other gods and worship them, then he'll pluck you from the land. We've been plucked from our foundation. We strayed in the past. It didn't happen bit by bit. It happened by one fell stroke. In 2 Chronicles 7:14, it says, if people will turn from their wicked ways. What are these wicked ways that we have in our land? We're following false gods. We're following false teachers, and we're following false beliefs. We've got to turn from these false gods. Did we not see that in Israel? How many times did they start following false gods? We find ourselves in the same place. We need to start seeking wise counsel and the people getting together and talking about what happened in this land so that we can get it back. I'm going to start, even though we had a very good talks before our foundation, I'm going to start with two quotes from our founding fathers. First, from James Madison, it says, we have staked the whole of our political institutions upon the capacity of mankind for self-government, upon the capacity of each and all of us to govern ourselves, to control ourselves, to sustain ourselves according to the 10 Commandments of God. And then the one that we hear often also from Patrick Henry. It cannot be emphasized too strongly or too often, this great nation was founded not by religionists but by Christians, not on religion but on the gospel of Jesus Christ. And with that quote from Patrick Henry, I want to go to his famous speech. And I want to have you look at the struggle he was having. Now, this was a couple of years before 1776, and he's looking at what we're looking at today, an out-of-control government, and what are we going to do about it? And this is selected portions of that famous speech. Should I keep back my opinions at such a time through fear of giving offense? I should consider myself as guilty of treason towards my country and an act of disloyalty toward the majesty of heaven, which I revere above all earthly kings. Mr. President, is it natural to men to indulge in the illusions of hope? We are apt to shut our eyes against the painful truth and listen to the song of the siren until she transforms us into beasts. For my part, whatever anguish of spirit it may cost, to know the whole truth, to know the worst, and to provide for it. And that's the question I want to ask you. Are we prepared to know the whole truth and then to provide for it and to know the worst? Because we've got some bad things in our history that we need to deal with that deal with how we lost the foundation. Patrick Henry goes on. He says, Sir, we are not weak if we make a proper use of those means of which the God of nature hath placed in our power, the millions of people armed in the holy cause of liberty, and in such a country as that which we possess are invincible by any force which our enemy can send against us. Besides, sir, we shall not fight our battles alone. There is a just God who presides over the destiny of nations, who will rise up, friends, to fight our battles for us. Gentlemen may cry, peace, peace, but there is no peace. Why stand here idle? What is it that gentlemen wish? What would they have? Is life so dear or peace so sweet as to be purchased at the price of chains and slavery? Forbid it, Almighty God. I mean, what? It's hard to say those words. I mean, what course others may take, but as for me, give me liberty or give me death. Today I'm going to go over a topic that's very uncomfortable in this present age of extreme political correctness. We have often heard that two wrongs don't make a right. How many times have we heard that two rights can make a wrong? And I think it's been discussed here today. We've talked about our rights, where they come from. And we talked about our rights coming from two different places. America was founded on the principle that our rights come from God. We had the unalienable rights of God. All that changed. Between 1861 and 1865, the United States had what is often called a civil war, even though there was nothing civil about it. And the major change in American law that came out of the American Civil War was a change in where our rights come from. They no longer come from God. How many people have ever been taught this? It's a fundamental change. We originally had our rights coming from God. Now we have rights which come from an anti-Christian, anti-God, humanist belief system. And that's what we see in force today. The issue I'm going to get is what we today call civil rights. We're taught to embrace civil rights because we're told that these give rights to blacks, but I want to show you what civil rights have done in our country. In 1980, the display of 10 commandments was declared unconstitutional because it violated the civil rights the federal government had laid out. Now, what does our God say? Does our God tell us to proclaim His law? Does our God tell us to declare His name? To declare His glory among our countrymen, to speak it publicly? Yes, it does. What did civil rights do? They said you cannot declare God's name public. It's not going to be in the schools. In 1963, in the Supreme Court case of Abington versus Shemp, better known as Murray versus Corlett, Madeline Murray O'Hare, they took prayer out of school because it violated civil rights. Not God-given rights, civil rights that came from the American Civil War. Said you cannot say prayers, Christian prayers to your children. Does that violate what God says? We have two sets of rights in this country. Which one do we choose? We weren't supposed to take it in 2003. Homosexuality was declared a civil right. Roe versus Wade, abortion, violated the civil rights of Roe. An article published in October 22nd, 2014. I'm going to read from it. It says, while President Barack Obama said during his first presidential campaign in 2008 that he thought marriage was strictly between one man and one woman, he now has constantly stated that same-sex marriage is guaranteed under the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment. Now, why does he say the 14th Amendment? The 14th Amendment is what created, what implemented civil rights in this country. So under the 14th Amendment is what gives us gay marriage. Well, let's just talk about how this all happened. What does our history say about this situation? We know we fought a war. Oops. Try to keep up my time here. We know we fought a war between 1861 and 1865. What was the product of that war? That war was over in 1865, and there's a lot of history that can be said. I'm not as good as the speaker that gave us the entire book of Revelation in 20 minutes. I can't give you the entire history of the Civil War and what all happened in 20 minutes. But what happened was the war was fought over state rights, whether states had a right to do what they wanted, or whether the federal government had control over the states. Now, basically, the federal government won, said it had control over states, so it had control over the rights of the people. It nationalized citizenship. The 14th Amendment was proposed in 1866, and again, this is the amendment that is going to force civil rights upon the American people. The 14th Amendment was proposed in June of 1866. All the southern states were considered back in the Union. North Carolina, South Carolina, we were in the Union, participating in the Union in 1865. We abolished slavery. The 13th Amendment was passed in December of 1865, and North Carolina participated in that. It was considered back in the Union in 1865. 1866, they proposed the 14th Amendment, which was going to nationalize citizenship, which was going to give Congress the authority to decide what the rights of all people are, civil rights. The southern states rejected it, all with the exception of Tennessee, and most of the northern states rejected the proposed 14th Amendment. It wasn't going to pass. So what did Congress do? Congress passed the Reconstruction Acts. What was the purpose of the Reconstruction Act? The purpose of the Reconstruction Act was to annul 10 states and then coerce them and force them to pass the 14th Amendment. Here's what happened. Congress said, the state of North Carolina, you're null. You don't exist anymore. But you've got to have a new constitution. You've got to send it to Congress. Congress has to accept it. And then when we accept this new constitution, composed of people that are loyal to Congress, not loyal to your state anymore, he said, at that point, we will, at that point that we admit your state into the Union, you're required by your legislature to pass the 14th Amendment. This is in the law. Congress passed a law that annulled the state of North Carolina and said, you can't come back in until you pass the 14th Amendment. And they went a step further. They said not only pass the 14th Amendment, but you are all states. The 14th Amendment is required to become part of the national Constitution before you can seat senators and representatives in Congress. Is that how we amend the Constitution? But that's what we're sitting under today. Andrew Johnson, President of the United States, vetoed all these acts as unconstitutional. And he said this is one of his vetoes. He says, another ground upon which these Reconstruction Acts are attempted to be sustained is this, that these 10 states are conquered territory. Conquered territory. Where does Congress get the authority to conquer states? The total purpose and function of any government is to guarantee and protect the rights of the people involved in that government, which to the federal government was the states. They had no authority to annul them. Well, 14th Amendment was passed. The state of North Carolina that's in operation today is actually the second state of North Carolina to enter the Union. It entered the Union because, remember, the first one was annulled by an act of Congress, and they were going to have this other state come into the Union under this Reconstruction Act, and it entered the Union on June 25th, 1865. June 25th, 1868. June 25th is when the state that's operating in Raleigh today came into the American Union. Congress had a supermajority passed over the president. And so what happened? The governor of North Carolina refused to leave his seat, of the original state of North Carolina, refused to leave his seat. So General Canby, a United States general in the United States Army, issued General Order Number 120 and ordered the removal of the governor of North Carolina from the governor's office on July 1st, 1868. Remember, the new state came in on June 25th. The new governor the old governor was removed by military order July 1st, 1868. Now, what did people say about the 14th Amendment? James G. Blaine was one of the congressmen from Maine, and he loved the 14th Amendment. And he said that he was trying to sell it out. And a lot of people say the 14th Amendment and this new set of rights is really for the black man. But James G. Blaine said this. He said, in making this extension of citizens, we're not confining the breadth and scope of our efforts to the Negro. It is for the white man as well. We intend to make citizenship national. And then he says this. As the vicious theory of state rights have been constantly at enmity with the true spirit of nationality, the organic law of the Republic, which is our Constitution, should be so amended that no standing room for the heresy would be left. So no standing room for state rights. Where did our rights come from prior to this amendment? It came from the people of the states, and we said our rights came from God. After this amendment was passed, Congress said they had the authority to decide what our rights are. And they said that they are a godless government, that they're going to have separation of church and state. There is no place that they're going to have equality for all. In America, we worship civil rights. That's one of our gods that we get an affection to, and we don't know how to separate ourselves because it feels prickly when we talk about it. It makes the hair on your back go up because we've been so indoctrinated. This is a great concept, a great bestowment upon the people until we see what it did. In Daniel chapter 3, when Nebuchadnezzar was making his idol and commanding everyone to worship it, and I'm going to compare his idol, him being a representative of government, and his idol being American civil rights. He says, and this is from Daniel 3:1. Basically, he made an image. He told the people to bow down to it. Whoever does not fall down and worship will immediately be thrown in the blazing furnace. Therefore, as soon as they heard the sound, the nations and peoples of every language fell down and worshipped the image of gold that Nebuchadnezzar had set up. That's what we have today. Everybody's bowing down and worshiping. But what's the next sentence? But there were some Jews, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, who pay no attention to you, your majesty, that neither serve your gods nor worship the image of gold you have set up. And Nebuchadnezzar confronted them and said, what are you doing? I'm going to send you to the fiery furnace if you don't bow down. And they said, if we are thrown into a burning blaze, the God we serve is able to deliver us from it, and he will deliver us from your majesty's hand. But even if he does not, we want you to know, your majesty, that we will not serve other gods or worship the image of gold you have set up. In America, we have educators, we have historians, we have constitutional so-called scholars and experts who fear societies and governments' furnace of fire. They refuse to stand up and talk about this part of our history because they're afraid they're going to be labeled a bigot, a racist. Heck, I don't even need to start labeling them. We all know what they are. And they do not teach the truth. Reconstruction basically created, I think, what we could equate by the earlier speakers, a prodigal nation. It allowed us this humanistic experiment to go out and experiment with immoral indulgence for 100 years. We got to do whatever we want outside of God, like the prodigal son. How has that served us? It's time to return to the Father, people. It's time to ask for forgiveness and get back under the rule of our Father. Over the years, I've run across many frustrated people, and I've run across people who said they're ready for an armed revolution. Of course, I'm always trying to stop all that. we must exhaust the avenues of remedy. America does not need a new revolution. We don't need that. We need a return to our foundation of reliance on God. We need to stop being deceived. And that's what we live in today. We live in a world of deception. We need a return to the truth. We need restoration. We need revival. That's what this country needs. We have to decide to get back to God. Healing our land begins with faith in and reliance on God. If we start seeking truth of what happened to us, historical stuff, I'm not saying this truth is going to free us. I'm not here to say I'm a savior or what this history, if you know it, will save us. It takes action. It takes a prayerful people who are willing to stand up and not be afraid, like Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, who are willing to stand up for what our foundation was, which was so eloquently talked about here by many speakers, and so I'm not going to put up with it. We actually have legal remedy if we will pursue it, and we are looking for people who want that remedy. It's a nonviolent legal remedy that we have a right to. We have a right under God. We have a right, even under this godless government, to petition against unconstitutional actions, the Reconstruction Acts, the acts that were put into place by Reconstruction that converted us where our rights come from God to our rights come from the federal government. How many people like the rights coming from the federal government? I think the results have been pretty darn good. We have a way to get out from underneath that if we will learn what happened. One of the things I want to say is I want to give people hope. This is a positive message. You know, Patrick Henry says, let me know the worst so that I can prepare for it. We need to know the worst, not so that we can be fearful, but so that we can prepare for it. This is where we need people who are going to come together, counsel together, and discuss this. And the ministers here that I would love to talk to after this is because we've got to get the church involved. We've got to get godly people involved. We can have a miracle. We can have faith that God will move mountains if we will pray, seek His face, keep His commands, have faith in Him, and stand up and not be afraid. Once we have faith in God, we should not be afraid of man. We have at America's Remedy, we have a lot of resources. You can come talk to me, talk to Cliff and Sarah back there behind the camera. We need people involved. We need people getting educated. We've got people getting educated in Texas and Virginia, kind of all over the country, of what we're doing here. I'd like for people to come visit us on Facebook at americasremedy.com. You can watch our videos on YouTube and start getting to understand. We put a bunch of this stuff out for free, but we will also do seminars and come and talk with you. You can follow us on Facebook. But people, it's not government's fault we don't have lawful government. It's not government's fault that we don't have a moral foundation. It's not government's fault that we're worshiping idols in this country. It's our fault because we haven't learned what it takes to get our freedom back. I want to thank everyone for having me here today. I want to thank Lynn. This is a great crowd.
All right, everybody. Joseph Gibson podcasting here, understanding the times in which we live today. There you go. There's your problem. Is really explained in a nutshell. That's the best one I can find. A lot of other lectures and a lot of other people have tried to explain it over the years, and they just don't quite get it. But let's see what this has status and what this has turned into, and then I'll open up the phone line 657-383-0616. But this is what has happened now because we become a godless nation and an idol-worshiping nation. And this is what now has turned into, selfish greed.
You know, there was an article up on Zero Hedge, a study, Statistica, did a holiday special study that said, how do you celebrate Christmas? And, of course, a lot of people have different Christmas traditions. What are the things that they consider to be essential? Well, a lot of people, for them, the number one answer was music. 49% said that's an essential holiday tradition, music that we listen to that gets us in the mood. But close to that, in a close second, was movies, Christmas movies. 46% said Christmas movies. Well, we have a favorite Christmas movie. It's a Wonderful Life. And one of the interesting things about it was that I did, on the 100th anniversary of It's a Wonderful Lie, we should say, the Federal Reserve, I called it that. I called the video that. Since it was based on a engineered panic, the 1907 panic, which features prominently there. And although he was in a wheelchair, you could very clearly see that Potter was modeled on J.P. Morgan. J.P. Morgan was really the archetype of most in most people's minds of a banker. It's a little banker that you see on Monopoly. That's a caricature of J.P. Morgan. And people understood the game that he was playing, but they were very effective in terms of running that scam to create a panic and then pushing through the Federal Reserve Act when a lot of the senators had gone home for the holidays. They won by 20 votes in the Senate, and yet 30 senators had already gone home on that December the 23rd. They play every angle with this. And, of course, the people who are manipulating us today play every angle. That was the first film, or report, I should say, that InfoWars ever had taken off of YouTube. And that was done 5 years before we were banned. When they said that they took it off, they said it was for copyright reasons, and yet it was fair use. I used some clips there to illustrate the point and to draw the parallels, hitting touching a base that everybody was familiar with culturally. But I got the clips, the short clips that I use, along with commentary, along with a lot of other content. I got the clips from the entire movie that had been up for free on YouTube for years and had nearly 1 million views, and it remained up. But every time my report on the creation of the Federal Reserve would get to 12,000 views, they took it down, and then somebody else put it up, and it got to 12,000 views, they took it down, and that happened several times. It was like, once it got up to 12,000 views, it got their attention, and then they immediately purged it. It's kind of interesting, in the same way that I got purged by another branch of the financial system, because they use the banks as a choke point. They use the banks to create hardship and panic and other things. And so this year, after I was purged by PayPal, I contacted, and I recorded it actually, I'll play that for you sometime, conversation that I had with somebody at PayPal saying, I want to know why I was taken off. And they went through and looked at the documents, and they said, well, this is strange. I've seen this before. No reason given. Just said remove immediately. So it seems like when you talk about the banking system, that it really hits a raw nerve. Why? Because it is absolutely fundamental to the control, to the lies that we're still experiencing 108 years later. So here's the report. I want to begin the program with It's a Wonderful Lie. Over the last 100 years, the Federal Reserve has created bubbles and burst them, enslaved us with debt, and destroyed our purchasing power through inflation. Yes, it's been a wonderful lie for the bankers. There are striking parallels in Frank Capra's It's a Wonderful Life to the lies and tricks that real bankers use to create the Federal Reserve. Human nature doesn't change, and the greedy elite of 1913 and 2013 look and act a lot like Potter, the banker in the movie. And many Americans are left like George Bailey, staring into the abyss as their dreams collapse and they face financial ruin. Do we live in a country that looks a lot more like Pottersville than Bedford Falls? What does Frank Capra's film show us about how we got here and how we can get out? When the Federal Reserve was created 2 days before Christmas 100 years ago, it was a culmination of 6 years of fraud, fear, and manipulation.
I've never really seen one, but that's got all the earmarks of being a run.
The Panic of 1907 was used to shape public support for the Fed. The panic was triggered by rumors that 2 major banks were about to become insolvent, just as we see in the movie.
George, there is a rumor around town that you've closed your doors. Is that true? I am going all out to help in this crisis. I have just guaranteed the bank sufficient funds to meet their needs. They will close up for a week and then reopen.
Just took over the bank.
I may lose a fortune, but I am willing to guarantee your people too. Just tell them to bring their shares over here, and I will pay 50 cents on the dollar.
Oh, you never miss a trick, do you, Potter?
Unfortunately, J.P. Morgan got away with the deception and was able to shut down competitors and snapped up assets at fire sale prices.
Take during the Depression, for instance. You and I were the only ones that kept our heads. You saved the building and lawn. I saved all the rest.
Yes, well, most people say you stole all the rest.
The envious ones say that, George. The suckers.
Charles Lindbergh Sr. warned people at the time of the creation of the Federal Reserve that it would not stop boom and bust cycles, but would actually create them in order to benefit its private owners. Here's what he said. To cause high prices, all the Federal Reserve Board will do will be to lower the rediscount rate, producing an expansion of credit and a rising stock market. Then, when businessmen are adjusted to these conditions, it can check prosperity in mid-career by arbitrarily raising the rate of interest. They can cause a pendulum of a rising and falling market to swing gently back and forth, or cause violent fluctuations by a greater rate variation. And in either case, they will possess inside information as to the financial conditions and advanced knowledge of the coming change, either up or down. This is the strangest, most dangerous advantage ever placed in the hands of a special privileged class by any government that ever existed. The system is private, conducted for the sole purpose of obtaining the greatest possible profits from the use of other people's money. They know in advance when to create panics to their advantage, and they know when to stop panic. Inflation and deflation work equally well for them when they control the finance. As we see in the movie, not all lending institutions have the same motivations.
Now, you take this loan here to Ernie Bishop. You know, that fellow that sits around all day on his brains in his taxi, you know. I happen to know the bank turned down this loan. But he comes here, and we're building him a house worth $5,000. Why?
Well, I handled that, Mr. Potter. You have all the papers there, his salary, insurance. I can personally vouch for his character.
Friend of yours?
Yes, sir.
You see, if you shoot pool with some employee here, you can come and borrow money. What does that get us? A discontented, lazy rabble instead of a thrifty working class.
As a former FDIC chair said, all too often the large banks use their models and their algorithms, and if you don't fit in their boxes, you don't get the loan. And Dodd-Frank legislation is tying the hands of small lenders, shutting out buyers and shutting down lenders. Today there are fewer lenders than at any time the government has kept records. 10,000 banks disappeared between 1984 and 2011.
This town needs this measly one-horse institution, if only to have some place where people can come without crawling to Potter. Come on.
In the movie, George gets to see what happens to the small town if Potter didn't have competition from credit unions and smaller lenders.
If it hadn't been for you...
Yeah, if it hadn't been for me, everybody would be a lot better off. My wife and my kids and my friends. Look, little fella, why you go off and haunt somebody else?
Yeah, so you still think killing yourself would make everyone feel happier, eh?
Oh, I don't know. I guess you're right. Suppose it'd been better if I'd never been born at all.
Pottersville, the only businesses thriving are vice. People are angry. The town is filled with signs like, keep moving, keep off the grass. Bert the cop actually shoots at George when he's running away and is no threat to anyone. Everyone is a renter. No one has a stake.
Now, you're Ernie Bishop, and you live in Bailey Park with your wife and kids.
Look, Bud, what's the idea? I live in a shack in Pottersfield. My wife ran away 3 years ago and took the kid, and I ain't never seen you before in my life, see?
Private property and everyone having a stake is the antidote to Pottersville.
You're all businessmen here. Doesn't make them better citizens, doesn't make them better customers.
But whether it's the Trans-Pacific Partnership or a global carbon tax, the global elite don't see you as a stakeholder. They want to turn us all into serfs and treat us like cattle.
Just remember this, Mr. Potter, that this rabble you're talking about, they do most of the working and paying and living and dying in this community. Well, is it too much to have them work and pay and live and die in a couple of decent rooms and a bath? Anyway, my father didn't think so. People were human beings to him, but to you, a warped, frustrated old man, they're cattle. In my book, he died a much richer man than you'll ever be.
I'm not interested in your book. I'm talking about the building and loan.
I know very well what you're talking about. You're talking about something you can't get your fingers on.
Speaking of riches, do you find the salary amounts amusing when Potter tries to buy George off?
Look at your side. Young man, 27, 28, married, making, say, 40 a week. 45. 45. George, I'll start you out at $20,000 a year. $20,000 a year? You wouldn't mind living in the nicest house in town? Buying your wife a lot of fine clothes? A couple of business trips to New York a year? Maybe once in a while Europe? You wouldn't mind that, would you, Jones? Would I?
Even if George had saved a lot of his $20,000 salary, would it have bought much a couple of decades later? By even the government's very conservative estimate of inflation, the dollar has lost 90% of its value in 1847 when the movie was made. The Fed's deliberate inflation is devastating to anyone trying to accumulate wealth through hard work and saving. So what is the answer to all the George Baileys out there 100 years after the government gave control of our money supply to private bankers like Potter? Well, Potter had more money than he could spend, but would any of you want to be Potter?
You sit around here and you spin your little webs and you think the whole world revolves around you and your money. Well, it doesn't, Mr. Potter. In the whole vast configuration of things, I'd say you were nothing but a scurvy little spider.
George Bailey finally sees how rich his own life is, as he sees the fruits of relationship, honesty, and compassion. Confidently pray that he will stop it.
I owe everything to George Bailey. Help him, dear Father. Joseph, Jesus, and Mary, help my friend, Mr. Bailey.
Help my son George tonight.
He never thinks about himself, God. That's why he's in trouble.
George is a good guy. Give him a break, God.
I love him, dear Lord. Watch over him tonight.
Please, God, help me get out with Daddy. Please bring Daddy back.
Dear Father in heaven, I'm not a praying man, but if you're up there and you can hear me, show me the way.
For the InfoWars Nightly News, I'm David Knight.
You're listening to the David Knight Show.
Well, today is all different, isn't it? I guess one of the reasons why this was so dangerous to them was the spoiler alerts. Not so much that you didn't know how the movie ended, because everybody has seen the movie, but the spoiler alert as to how they want to end our society in 2030. You look at this Christmas, and you see 12,000 religious exemptions in the military, not one granted. Not one granted. If you were a bank and you had 12,000 applications from black families to buy a home, and you rejected every single one, especially when many of them are qualified, what do you think we would conclude from that? We would conclude that the bank hates black people. I think we can conclude that the military and the federal government in general hates religious people, people who have convictions. They feel threatened by that. They will have no God before them. That is the hallmark of tyranny. At Christmas time, we celebrate the God who became man. But governments, always tyrannical governments, are run by men who want to become God. And as a matter of fact, it's become a hallmark of the transhumanist technocracy that these people believe, literally believe, that they will will become like God, and that they will live forever through their technocracy, through their technology. You notice in that movie, he says to Potter, he says, to you, these people are just cattle. Boy, it has never been more true, has it? They feel like they are entitled to put dog tags or ear tags or whatever on us and treat us and order us around like cattle. No one owns anything in their plan for the future. This is a spoiler alert. There is rampant inflation. The federal debt, after trillions from Trump and trillions more from Biden in just 2 years, not even 2 years, federal debt now equals about $287,000 per income tax paying household, because not every household pays income tax in their system. So we have rampant inflation, as I pointed out there. Ludicrous. This guy got a house for $5,000. Can't get a car for that, anywhere close to that now, especially even a used car that runs, because of the inflation, because of the engineered panic and crisis. And we have a president who is blackmailing people, the Biden blackmail. Let's not call it the mandate. I don't take orders, and I'm not going to be blackmailed. But that's what Biden is trying to do. It's the Biden blackmail. He's blackmailing people out of their jobs now after, in 2020, we had Trump and his engineered panic. You understand by now, especially if you're a listener of this program, you understand that the panic of 651 days ago, that panic was as engineered as the 1907 panic, and it was engineered for a purpose. Trump engineered the panic. Trump began to destroy business after business. They were not essential, and he put Main Street and middle-class businesses out on the street. And now Biden, isn't it interesting? We're always told that Republicans, they always are the champions of business, right? Especially small business. We always love small business. So they get a Republican to destroy the small businesses of Main Street. And the Democrats come out and say, we're there for the working man. So they get a president who, and the party that's there for the working man, to push the working man out of their jobs. How fitting, how typical, that they always pick these people so they can run counter to type, counter to the stereotype.
All right, everybody, Joseph Gibson, podcasting here, understanding the times in which we live today. Pretty much depicts the Federal Reserve Bank right up, and you wonder why these, they're taking so long to accomplish their agendas. And people say, well, why didn't they, they had the Depression there. Look, what the Founding Fathers established here, what liberty and freedom and everything that was established, there was no way to pull the rug out from everybody back over all this time. But now they can. Now they can, because they've attacked little by little, slowly by slowly, and the agendas and everything that's out there, the many different facets of the New World Order, and it's a timepiece. It's all a matter of time. And are we in the end times now? Is it almost over? Is this it? They're hinting nuclear war. What does Jesus say? Rumors of war. Don't be troubled. Wars, the troubles. All this stuff's coming. But it's coming to pass. Not a generation shall pass, and then we will see these things. The end will come. So, I'm going to open up the phone lines. If anybody's out there, they want to comment on Pottersville, America. Because that's what America is, Pottersville. 657-383-0616. Press the number 1 if you want to talk here on the phone here. If not, I've got plenty of documentary here left here to play to educate the masses and tell the people what's happening out there. And it's really, it's a shame that many of the people out there, they I noticed that really there's good people out there, but we're silenced. We're not really. movement amongst the good anymore. There's no it's just like we have too much now. We have too much stuff. We have too much entertainment. We have too much of nice things. I mean, back in 1776, they lived in shacks with with their pigs and their cows and straw, and they didn't have flat screen TVs. They didn't have an Acura in the garage. So they to go off to war was nothing. Today, many people, you're not going to get the same type of attitude, right? Oh, let's see here. The NWO's official announcement by government shocks the planet. Let's play that one there for you.
It's Sunday, July 11th. The year is 2021, and the New World Order has been officially announced. InfoWars, the most banned network in the world. There comes a time when evil launches its new war. It does every few generations. Its new plan. That it has to emerge. That it's not in the shadows anymore. We're now there. It has been announced by Australia, by the EU, by the European Union, by the UN, and by the Pope, as well as many other, quote, world leaders in the last 48 hours, that a new world order this year of permanent lockdowns, forced inoculations, and fraudulent PCR tests leave your home. They are now in mainstream national television, all over the world saying the same message, that you're going to be locked down permanently because being out talking to others is bad, and that this is to politically control you when they plunge the world economy into a total depression and issue you a world digital ID via your smartphone and then an implantable microchip. You can see an article with these different videos and reports that is just Bombshell by Jamie White at Infowars.com. Mike Adams did a deep analysis of many of the government documents that are public and admittedly put out on the contact tracers and the strike teams now coming to your homes, and they're preparing for forced lockdowns and even quarantines. So that is all coming up, the same martial law you've seen in Europe and other areas now coming here. We're going to have those documents for you, lay them all out in great detail at the bottom of the hour. We need to mobilize our governors, our legislatures, our churches, our businesses against this global government, big corporations, communist China, the UN, Hollywood, the blue states, the blue cities. This is an incredible time to be alive. Fauci has now announced on all the Sunday shows that he's our God, he's our master. Don't agree with him, big tech bans you. You may remember Congress. That he does want forced inoculations now. So that's all official. It's all happening. They're moving into high gear. These are not vaccines to protect you. These are vaccines that cause all sorts of illnesses and are soft kill weapons. We have doctors and scientists laying all that out. But first, let's go to that report where they've announced the New World Order in Australia and all over the world. But Australia is the microcosm. What's being done there is now coming here.
Today is the first full day of the New World Order. Outdoor gatherings are limited to 2 people. Exercise is allowed, but no further than a 10-kilometre radius from your home. Browsing in shops is not permitted. Only 1 person per household may leave to do essential shopping. And from tomorrow, funerals are limited to 10 people.
It was a world pandemic. It's a 1 in 100-year event. So you can expect that we will have transmission from time to time, and that's just the way it is. We've got to accept that this is the New World Order. We've got to accept that this is the New World Order. This is the New World Order. This is the New World Order.
Today is the first full day of the New World Order. The New World Order. The New World Order.
I want to be straight with you. There will be no return to the old normal for the foreseeable future. I repeat, there will be no return to the old normal for the foreseeable future.
So people assume we are just going back to the good old world which we had, and everything will be normal again in how we are used to normal, in the old fashion. This is
a fiction. It will not happen.
A vaccine on its own will not end the pandemic. Surveillance will need to continue. People will still need to be tested, isolated, and cared for. Contacts will still need to be traced and quarantined. Communities will still need to be engaged.
It is a big idea. A new world order.
We're going to come back and play the rest of this and then get into all the actual clips from the ministers. This is a permanent world government dress up in masks and gloves and say you're toxic and say you're not essential and say you've got to be given deadly shots that sterilize you and kill you down the road. I mean, this is it. It's here. They always promise to do it. It's led by Bill Gates and Klaus Schwab. They're literally coming to bankrupt you and kill you. Permanent martial law, and you'll have to have injections to even leave your house or have a job. You'll be tested multiple times a week by a PCR computer, and that now having a cold is illegal, and that you will be sent to an emergency center. You will be put on a ventilator until you are dead. That is the new guillotine. A lot of people are freaking out that we knew all of this over a year ago, and how do we know it will all come true? Well, the UN said so. We watched 20 hours in videos from their meeting, where they admitted vaccines aren't real or all a giant fraud, killing a bunch of people, but they've been ordered by Big Pharma to carry this out because the world economy is about to collapse, and they need an excuse to silence you so that you can't speak out against what's happening. Now, what's crazy is we told you this over a year ago and played the clips. I have national federal TV out of Canada saying the same damn thing last week, and I'm going to play that for you. You're like, why would they state it like a villain in a Marvel comic universe? Because when you get to this point, they can no longer hide it, and they're telling the rest of the government why they're doing it. Because the police are saying, why are we churches closed for a year and a half? Well, Walmart's open. Why are we people are going bankrupt committing suicide mass, and hardly anybody's even dying of COVID, and the COVID shots don't work, and the vaccines don't work, and they make people sick. They go, it's because of our new world order. And we're taking over, and we can't have them talking to each other in the streets with the Great Reset. They're getting ready to claim hackers shut down Wall Street. They're getting ready to claim hackers are going to take your pension fund. Klaus Schwab and the Davos Group have written the white papers on that, and they run the world. What they plan happens. They're in charge. Everybody tries to act like, oh, it's just Alex Jones over there. He just says these crazy things. And I agree it sounds crazy to have a virus scare. And then inject people with something that gives them infertility and cancer and brain damage and heart attacks. But that's what all the good scientists that weren't part of this, but prestigious ones, said a year ago when they saw these vaccines. They go, those aren't vaccines. Those are gene therapies. And they've tried those before where it blocks all viruses' proteins. You need a lot of viruses. We exchange information via viruses. But it doesn't matter. Your body's made of the same protein as viruses. You have to attack the RNA of a virus. The body has to learn that individual RNA. You don't want to stop a virus because of its protein shell, its protein spike. And if you do that, the harpoon that rams into your cell, if you make your body immune to that, autoimmune to that, you're going to attack your own body. They knew what was going to happen. What did we tell you a year ago? Brain damage, heart attacks, cardiovascular problems, because the most prestigious scientist in the world, the discoverer of mRNA, the discoverer of HIV, Nobel Prize winner, the head chief scientist at Pfizer, the head of the EU Advisory Commission, Yadon, Ludard, I can name all of them. But another group of scientists, Peter Daszak, Fauci, and others, with Obama and the Democrats, were running Wuhan with the Trichomes. They developed it, they created it, they released it, and now they're in charge of it. And they're even in charge of the vaccine to counter it, that it stops the protein, but it actually makes you attack your body. And now, like I told you a year ago, the vaccines won't protect you. Now they're saying, oh, magically they don't protect you, but a few months, you need new shots every few months. And Bill Gates says this is to upgrade and put the UN in charge and massively build giant vaccine production so much that you can be vaccinating 7.5 billion people once a month with new things, where you've got to have this new shot every month to be authorized to leave your house. And then they can really start testing on us like guinea pigs. This is such a giant diabolical plan. So here is the UN. I can play the video. We already done it probably 50 times. Of Dr. Michael Ryan of the UN Rapid Reaction Force says WHO officials says authorities need to enter homes and remove family members and put you in isolation. This is the perfect cover for permanent martial law, and it all violates the Nuremberg Code. I'm going to be going into later in the next hour. I'm actually going to read from it. It will blow you away how everything I read in the Nuremberg Code is what they're violating. You will see it on its face, how illegal this is and how the Nazis were executed for what these people are now doing. I mean, they are making their move, not with tanks and airplanes, but with the whole medical bureaucratic eugenics system. So let's get into it right now. Here's Fauci on CNN. He was also on all the other major channels, saying he is for local governments mandating. That means forced. Because, again, federally it blocked, it's illegal, but if a bunch of cities do it on their own, what do you have, 1,000 Supreme Court cases? Just like amnesty cities, just like sanctuary cities are illegal, or cities that ban guns are illegal. They still get away with it. Democrat cities, so they're the ones going to send their health departments out with these federal goons. We got the documents to take you forcibly to centers. It's a revolution. It's illegal, but they're doing it. Here's Fauci.
I have been of this opinion, and I remain of that opinion, that I do believe at the local level, Jake, there should be more mandates. There really should be. We're talking about life and death situation. We've lost 600,000 Americans already, and we're still losing more people. There have been 4 million deaths worldwide. This is serious business. So I am in favor of that. You know, one of the things that will happen, and I think the hesitancy at the local level of doing mandates is because the vaccines have not been officially fully approved.
Oh! Remember, they counted car wrecks, cancer deaths, heart attacks, all as COVID. Now when COVID actually kills you from the vaccine, the documents here, most people dying from it, died from the vaccine. They then call it COVID. It's all a lie. The inventor of the PCR test just happened to die about 2 years ago, but he said that the whole thing was a fraud, just like Theranos. Remember that company with Bill Gates and that lady that was a so-called PCR test? It was all a scam, telling you had cancer. It's all a fraud. They said we'd have 3 million dead Americans. We'd have millions of dead in Europe. We didn't. Most of the 600,000, 94% out of something else. It's a lie. It's hysteria. Now I've got all these clips right here. Dr. Lena Wynn on CNN basically saying it should be mandatory, you should be punished. Here she is.
Clear to them that the vaccine is the ticket back to pre-pandemic life. And the window to do that is really narrowing. I mean, you were mentioning, Chris, about how all these states are reopening. They're reopening at 100%. And we have a very narrow window to tie reopening policy to vaccination status. Because otherwise, if everything is reopened, then what's the carrot going to be? How are we going to incentivize people to actually get the vaccine? So that's why I think the CDC and the Biden administration needs to come out a lot bolder and say, if you're vaccinated, you can do all these things. Here are all these freedoms that you have. Because otherwise, people are going to go out and enjoy these freedoms anyway.
She read those exact lines 4 months ago. And now all the world, they're reading the exact lines that, sorry, though you've had all the shots, you got to have more, it doesn't protect you. It's all a trap. They're holding you hostage. You don't become free by them forcing an experimental injection into you. You let them buffalo you and control you and put you in their cult of domination. They are a eugenics cult. Now here she is yesterday. Here she is changing her tune, but still saying punish people that haven't had the shots. And remember, all the states and cities that ended the lockdowns, they had much lower levels of it. Because there wasn't depressed people inside with masks breathing bacteria and getting bacterial pneumonia that they would then misdiagnose and put you on a ventilator and kill you.
All right, let's end that right there. Okay.
What it is that we...
All right, well, I guess we'll wrap it up right there. Hey, I hope you took this information and can use it wisely.